got your mics on. You got your flams out.
I got my flames out.
I got my Jim Jams.
I got my flamey flames.
My bloggly higgles.
Put your bloggly higgles back in your blants. Butterscotch Shenanigans. Hey everybody, welcome to Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast for Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm the web programmer.
And I'm Sam, and I make pictures.
And before we get started, we have a warning or disclaimer or whatever. Anything can happen on this show. Things get rambunctious. There may be profanity, innuendos, euphemisms, verbs, nouns, language of all sorts.
Persons, places, and things.
Yeah. We might even sprinkle some adjectives in there. So if you're sensitive, if you are prude, if you're...
Those are all adjectives, Seth. That's great.
Easily offended, then that's your problem. And stop listening. All right. First up, on the news docket. We have a docket now, by the way. That's the first news item.
Yeah, we're very official right now.
It's gold encrusted. Well, Sam doesn't have cancer anymore.
Yeah. We kind of left you guys hanging last Wednesday before I was heading into treatment. And if you didn't see the good news, we posted about it, yelled about it a little bit. But yeah, I don't have the cancers. So congrats.
Any cancers.
Yeah, nice work, Sam.
Do we have any special insight or details on how that went down?
Yeah, so went in and got the PET scan done, and the tech actually let me come back and look at it before it went up, which they usually they're not supposed to do.
Because usually it's bad.
You mean Sam? Scan. She didn't let you do it, but we're going to talk hypothetically as if
she did do it, then I would have gone back there and seen. I would have gotten to look at a 3D image of my body
where you wouldn't have seen anything.
Where I wouldn't have seen anything, but also I don't know exactly what I'm looking for. So it was this sort of goofy situation where I was looking at it and I was like, okay, I don't see any. A bright white light is what you don't want to see, right? So I was looking through this thing and I was like, just creeping on it. And there always is some, because it still measures just general cellular activity. So there's always going to be some. So I was looking, but I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm looking for, but I know where it would be if it was going to be anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I know that there shouldn't be anything there at all, which is sort of in my left chest wall. So I had her
usually a pretty light activity area.
Yeah, there's usually nothing going on there unless
you just got some lungs there.
Yeah, so I had her sort of scroll back and over that like for 15 seconds. Which I'm sure she was like, what? And there was nothing there. So then we went upstairs, got the official news from the doctor, which was very exciting. Had a brief moment where I got very teary-eyed, but it literally was like a half a second where it was just like, and then it was done. Just kind of shot out of my face.
It was like
it was like teary
shotgun. It was a shotgun of tears.
Yeah, I just blinked it back. Like you wouldn't be able to tell. We actually got video of the whole thing too from the Forever an Astronaut crew for the documentary, so that should be really fun to be able to look back.
Well, here's the great part about the video stuff. So our buddy Dylan from Forever an Astronaut was there with his camera. He was capturing all of Sam's appointments. So he was there for the PET scan and everything.
It's like 5 hours of stuff.
It's like 5 hours. And he's recording this digitally with his camera. And the uncompressed video was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes. And by the time we got to the actual appointment where the doc was going to come in and, reveal whether or not the cancer was still present, which it wasn't, but at that point, Dylan only had 4 minutes of video left. And so he was like, okay, so here's the deal. And he's like frantically trying to swap out hard, SDDs into his camera and stuff. And he's like, okay, so I don't mean to rush anything, 'cause I know this is important. So I'm just going to put it out there that I only have 4 minutes of video. So
that's funny.
If something important is going to happen, it should probably happen within 4 minutes.
Did it happen? Really did it manage to go within the 4 minute mark?
I believe we got it in. So
nice.
It was pretty funny.
It did, yeah. And whenever there's good news like that, the doctor usually likes to lead with it. Like if you have a doctor's appointment and the doctor just comes in and makes small talk for 20 minutes, shit's about to go down.
Yeah. So she came in and I preemptively just asked her how my blood work was, because I needed a little warm up, a little doom warm up before the actual announcement started. So I talked about that for like a minute, and everything was cool. But so someone was asking me, what's it looking like going, from here on out?
What does this mean?
So we're in remission now, and basically what that means is a few things. One, for my sort of cancer, if it doesn't show up within the first year, so we're at about, I guess, 3 months from the final treatment. So if it doesn't show up within a year
3
of
months
the final
from the
treatment,
stem cell.
right?
You're 6 months out from your final chemo.
Correct.
Yeah.
But so they count kind of the final actual treatment, which in this case is the stem cell one.
Okay.
If we make it to a year full remission, then with the sort of cancer that I had, which is this extremely aggressive lymphoma, then once the year mark has passed, we should be in the clear. But they won't call you cured until 5 years. So that's going to be, who knows where, who knows.
Well, with how fast growing your particular brand of cancer was.
Yeah, I should have.
If it sits there for 3 years and then comes back, that'd be super weird.
Yeah, and that's sort of that's part of the reason why I was very pleased with this one. I had gotten a PET scan back in about 4 months ago between the two transplants, and there wasn't didn't appear to be any cancer activity on it. There was some glowing that they thought was a pulled muscle in the back. But there wasn't any of what they thought cancer activity was, but that wasn't particularly compelling to me because it had only been a month since I'd gotten a huge blast of chemo. So now that we're, basically where we're at now is about 7 months out from my last chemo operation, which is about the same time when I would have been able to be diagnosed with a PET scan after the first one. So in other words, to me, that's why I was so excited about it. And this is
so you've gone much further.
This is a real time. Yeah. To me, this is a very real clear as opposed to sort of a maybe a false positive. So,
yeah. Thank God.
So we're good. We're a good team. But yeah, someone's asking kind of what does this look like then? Because the treatment's not done technically, because I'm still on all these drugs for various things. So I'm just taking a bunch of pills and going to hospital every 2 weeks, get checked out, and I get another PET scan in 6 months. So hopefully we won't have to talk about anything cancer related until next year, which would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? No matter what happens, either way, Crashlands is coming out on
January 21st.
January 21st. So it just kind of worked out weirdly that within 24 hours of Sam getting his all clear from the doctor, we also settled on a launch date for Crashlands. Which is a nice sort of bookend because we started Crashlands because of the first cancer diagnosis. Mm-hmm. So we'll be wrapping up the cancer and the Crashlands right at about the same time. So
very cathartic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we can do whatever we want, like scream and run around and panic as our game hits the public and everybody starts tearing into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you want to get in on the Crashlands action, we have on our Butterscotch Shenanigans Facebook page, we have a launch event which you can join to chat with people and also to get notifications there. We have a coming soon page on Steam, so if you just search for Crashlands on Steam, you can add Crashlands to your wish list, and you totally should because it'll alert you when it finally launches. We also have at crashlands.net. We have a launch day email sign up, so you can get notified that way if you want. We have wallpapers. We just revealed a sweet new Crashlands launch poster, which we're super proud of because no studios ever really do this. I don't know. It's more of a movie thing.
Yeah.
So
we took some inspiration from Star Wars for this one, which you should be able to tell if you look at it.
A lot of inspiration.
Yeah. Indie Game Mag picked up on it. What I particularly like is that in the same sort of fashion that the Millennium Falcon is flying away in the new Star Wars poster, we have the flop rocket flying away from a bunch of lasers, which is far less majestic of a spacecraft.
Yeah.
But
the Millennium Falcon is actually not. Like, it's majestic because of, its place in
it's because
in
it
history.
can make the Kessel run in 12 parsecs.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But it's actually, it's a kind of a weird looking vehicle.
It is. I bet it couldn't get to space in the cave.
No way.
No.
Yeah.
It would be hitting all the stalactites.
So other than the launch date, which I'm so freaking relieved that we have an actual day.
I know,
don't know about
it feels
you guys,
great.
But
it feels amazing. I think also just because of where the beta is at now, we've gotten through pretty much most of the major bug problems, like major sort of crash related things. And Seth also managed to cut down the RAM usage of the game by 70. So it went from 350 by about a fifth. 350 megabytes just turned into about 280, which means that it should run much more stably on lower power devices like iPhones and
yeah, we were having this weird thing where people on 1 gig devices, which is like iPhone 5s, I think, iPhone 6, not 6S, but 6, iPad Mini 2s, blah blah blah, a whole bunch of iOS devices in particular with 1 gigabyte of RAM. The game would run fine most of the time. But then every now and then one small thing would happen where it would like load in one extra texture page or something, and then the game would just kill itself because it was just straddling the line where it was almost using too much RAM, and then that one little thing would set it over, and then it would crash.
Yeah.
And so we've cut it down by 70 megabytes, which means it should now just go on those devices.
Yeah.
Which is
what's left though is we're hoping we can still cut it down enough that we can even get it to run on 500 megabyte devices.
Yeah, that's gonna be pretty tricky.
It's gonna be tricky. We don't know if we can do it, but it's one of those things. It's worth a shot because so many existing iDevices are still in that range.
Yeah,
and I mean Android devices as well. Though that's a much broader field of hardware.
Yeah, and I think it's the case though that Android devices handle RAM problems a little bit differently. So for example, on my old Galaxy S3, Quadrupus Rampage, which had a gig of RAM, Quadrupus Rampage would run totally fine, no problem. And at certain points, it would kind of slow down when things got too crazy. But on an iOS device with the same amount of RAM, when things got too crazy, instead of a slowdown, the game would just close. So I think it's just how the OSs kind of handle these problems differently. But in any case, it's a problem in both situations. So, and the weird thing is that, so we didn't really anticipate the RAM usage because the last time we really thought about the RAM, the game was using about 120 megabytes, which
is like 0.
It's pretty low, especially for PC. My God,
doesn't even count.
But that was before we hooked up the Crashlands creator to the game. And what we found was that all the stuff that we're loading into RAM for the story, so all the outposts that exist in the world, the bases that you see, all of the dialogue, the characters, the boss fights, all that stuff, the quests, that's what was using a whole bunch of RAM. So without all that stuff, the game uses still uses about 120, 130 megabytes. But once we load the campaign, it was using 350. So we just need to learn how to handle those story elements much more dynamically and much better. So we have another patch coming, which will be probably toward the end of the week, where we'll have even more optimizations, and it'll be running smooth as butter.
Oh yeah.
So that's where we are with the beta. And once we're done with these optimizations, we're going to be hitting all kinds of various quality of life things, bug fixes. We're still trying to squeeze some features in to the game.
Yeah, there are a few cool things left that we want to do.
Yeah, and including for this patch that we're about to put out for the beta, we've added a salvaging feature where players can break down crafted items to reclaim some of the components. So I'm pretty excited to see people's response to that. Mm-hmm. It'll be good.
Should be fun.
And next week, Adam's coming up to St. Louis.
Yeah.
Just super exciting.
It's been a while. I can't.
Why are you doing that, Adam?
Good question. Maybe I shouldn't go. Is that what we were trying to say?
Yeah.
Stay away.
I try to get up to St. Louis every, 6 weeks or so. This one's been a little delayed. I think the last time was in September, maybe. Because we had, there's holiday stuff is happening, and it just gets a little harder to make all the various travel arrangements that have to be made. But this one is a lot of the focus is actually going to be on finally getting some video for the dev series thing that Forever and Astronaut's doing. Because currently I don't exist in any way, shape, or form except as a voice off in the distance.
We did Skype Adam in on video though for when we launched the beta.
Oh, that's true.
We had to sign a contract that said that Adam was actually an existing person and not just some sort of echoed version that set them out.
Yeah, which we don't really know that though.
That's true. We haven't seen him.
Yeah,
I have a pretty short memory, and I haven't seen Adam in a couple months now. So
I may not exist.
I don't know.
Who's to say? But yes, I'm going to come up to prove my existence, and then, otherwise we'll be working like usual. But we wanted to have a moment in between, or sort of at the end of beta before launch, where we all got back in the same room again for a good solid several days, just so we could power through any remaining stuff, because it just happens to be a lot easier to handle design discussions and planning when we're all in the same place.
Yeah,
indeed. And otherwise, in our news of the week, I'm going to be giving a talk on Wednesday night, which if you're listening to this podcast on podcast launch day, that's tonight.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be talk about game balance. It's probably going to be about 40 minutes to an hour, somewhere in there. And it'll be pretty informative. It's going to be at the St. Louis Science Center at 7 o'clock. There'll probably be some signs up and stuff. I don't know. I don't know my way around the Science Center that well, but there is a giant T-Rex.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully it's in front of the T-Rex. That'd be amazing.
That would
be a good place for
Is it a
talk.
real T-Rex or a...
Yeah. So, I mean, even if you can't find my talk,
It's a living T-Rex.
it's
a
fine. 'cause
living
there's a
T-Rex? Yeah, I think actually you could probably just hold a cup of water and then watch. You can use it basically as like a
sonar
getting
device
hotter, getting cooler device, right? Whereas you get closer to the T-Rex, it'll just vibrate more and make those little ripples.
Yeah, and if you start slipping in goat blood, then you'll know you're super close to my talk.
Or if you
Maybe
see
too-
half of a
too
lawyer.
close.
Yeah.
half of a lawyer on a toilet.
Yep.
So I'm going to give him that talk. It's going to be super fun. And if it's not going to be very technical either. So even if you aren't a game developer, but you just kind of are curious about how games work, I would still recommend coming. And the last thing we have on our docket, which again is a real physical object that we own, we have T-shirts. And this is the last
week.
This is the last week that they're going to be available. They're available through the
I think the 14th. So next Monday.
14th. Yeah, Monday. And I'm gonna put in my personal guarantee on these shirts because these shirts are 2/3 of my wardrobe, if not 80% or more. They're super soft.
Yeah, they're great.
They're unbelievably soft. As you walk past people, they will give you massages just so they can feel your shirt. And those shirts are at bit.ly/bscotchjorts.
Or you can just go through the website and there's a little sidebar ad for them sitting there. So
At butterscotch-shenanigans.com. We gotta just click on the t-shirt picture of the t-shirt. All right, so let's just get into some questions.
yeah, I think we need to tackle as many as is physically possible.
Yeah, we're gonna have a question apocalypse.
Question
like,
Getty.
Like a Serengeti,
It's just huge.
It's just been an open plain of questions. All right, so first question, which, oh, by the way, these questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. And if you want to get your questions on here, just head over there and ask. And if people vote for your questions, then maybe we'll answer them.
Yeah.
Yeah. First question comes from Ulner Evern with +9 upvotes. He asks, are some custom smileys for the forum a part of your small post-Crashlands projects? And do you plan a forum overhaul after Crashlands?
I think to the first part of that question, yeah.
Smileys?
Smileys for sure. I think I would like to, because that's the sort of thing that I would like to have done, but don't necessarily want to do.
I was thinking we could actually
And-
just have like a varying series of sad faces.
Yeah, there's actually just going to be one emoticon, and it's extremely sad.
Or to fit in with the vibe of the place, only happy faces. Would probably be the better move.
Yeah, so
It could be like that Dr. Payne chart, but just very degrees of extremely happy faces.
there's a few things that we want. So we talked about this a little bit last time as far as making sort of more fun and cool ways to have the community kind of build itself and interact with us and that sort of thing. And I think doing something like having people actually generate the emoticons that we get to use would be really fun. So
We have like an
always
emoticon off.
Yeah, because we actually had one guy who just posted a bunch that he made that were just kind of random, that were fantastic. So I thought,
But I mean, do we want them to be Butterscotch Universe themed?
Oh yeah,
or-
ideally
think we
they
could
would
ask
be.
for it, yeah.
Ideally they
Yeah.
would be characters from our games doing different things, or
Yeah.
whatever.
but I think it'd be
like an
something like that would be
angry
fun.
Viru face.
Yeah, yeah.
And super happy juice box.
Yeah, they would need to be pretty minimalist because they're super tiny. But yeah, I mean, and if some fan does decide they want to make those, then we could probably hook those up pretty quick.
So I think
whatever.
there's so Adam was mentioning kind of the benefit of actually getting to all be in the same room together earlier, and we know we tend to, when we actually get to all hang out in the same place, we tend to dream big, and I think talking about forum stuff and just kind of general community hub things will probably be on the docket for when Adam gets here, as far as how to just best do all these things, because we don't know what we're doing at all. And so the fact that there's people who actually, hang out most days with us on the forums or in the Discord chat or whatever else it's really cool. But we want to be doing a good job and do cooler stuff if we can. So if you have any thoughts on that, there's actually an open forum post that just is talking about kind of what other cool things you'd like to see out of the Butterscotch community, other opportunities for hanging out together as a crew. And we do have one really exciting thing, hopefully on the horizon, which I can't say anything about yet, that might be happening.
We do?
Around launch time. Yeah.
Have you said anything to me about it?
Yeah, you know what it is. But
Okay.
You're just not able to
You know
recall
what it is, but you don't know what Sam's talking about. But if he said, you would know.
So I'll keep that under wraps for now. But there's we want to do a lot of cool stuff. So if you have any ideas for things in that vein, feel free to pop in there and drop them like they're hot, because they are hot.
Yeah, so don't touch them. All right, so next question comes from Young Chris 54. Hopefully not too young, because if you're under the age of 13, you cannot have a Butterscotch ID.
And should not be listening to this podcast.
It's against the law. But it says Young Chris 54, so I assume he was born in
Maybe
1954.
he's like an older man trying to retain aspects of his youth.
He's retaining his youth.
Yeah.
So Chris with 9 upvotes asks, what is the highest score in Roid Rage? Which normally wouldn't really make for a podcast question, but we haven't hooked up global leaderboards yet, so nobody can actually check. So
Yeah, that is one of those things that I need to do.
yeah, so what is it, Adam?
I don't know.
just
I
reviewed
put them all in that document, but I don't have it open. One of you guys knows what they are.
So what I see here on the docket is best juice is 226.
Whoa.
And
But
also,
so for those who haven't played this game, it is super hard.
Yeah. Getting your
people-
first 3 takes about probably 20 minutes of
it's
practice.
skewed heavily to the left.
Yeah.
Most people get fewer than 10.
My best is 44.
I think mine is 60 something.
Yeah.
But with that comes with an important note, which is most of the top players have the flop rocket.
Yeah. It turns out the flop rocket, people tell us, is you can use it very slowly, and that means that you can dodge things kind of more easily. And so, yeah.
The flop rocket controls differently than everything else. And the way that you get the flop rocket in Roid Rage is by actually beating flop rocket the game. If you get to space, then you can use the flop rocket in Roid Rage.
So the comparative power there, though, is that the best person is 226 with the flop rocket, and the best person without a flop rocket, 101.
Yeah.
So that's still very impressive, though. But
It is.
I gotta say, though,
101 is impressive.
I tried to use the flop rocket, and I fail utterly at it because I don't have the patience.
yeah, same here.
It's a totally different playstyle, because the flop rocket, you can control your thrust, but it doesn't slow down either, unless you shoot your engine the other direction. So it controls very differently from all the other ships in Roid Rage, and if you use it correctly, it's a very slow, methodical kind of maneuvering around, which is just that's not my bag.
No, I'd rather do it fast and die more frequently than slowly accumulate points.
Yeah, exactly. Go down swinging, right?
But yeah, but I believe that on the server we didn't think anybody would get very high. That's and I mean you can see the best without the flop rocket is only 101, right? So I didn't even put the integer that I'm using to store it on the server can only go up to 255.
Yeah,
So,
but
no
the
one's hit that
asteroid
yet.
field actually gets more dense.
Yeah, it gets
the higher
harder
your
and
score
harder.
gets. So it's pretty unlikely that somebody's going to get much higher than where it currently
But I want to
is.
see somebody get 255.
Because it's actually the integer limit on
Yeah.
this one.
If somebody gets there, I'll up the integer limit, and we can go even bigger.
What I can do is I can patch Roid Rage so that if you hit 255 juice, then the asteroid field just gets 100% density. So you just get enclosed by roids. And also we have
Or they start
lifetime,
homing after you.
So lifetime juice. The 2 players have over 40,000 lifetime juice collected, which if the best is 226 in a given run, we can assume that God, I don't know how many people. That's like well.
I mean,
over
your
probably
your
400.
average juice collection run is going to be like 7 pieces.
Yeah.
That's
So in other words, there's some people who have played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Roid Rage.
Well, actually, yeah, let's just multiply
Rounds.
this. The person with the most deaths has 6,800 deaths. Mm-hmm. So if you just multiply that out, that's like,
Well, yeah. Well, you don't need to
times.
multiply it at that point because 6,800 deaths means 6,800 attempts. So that's pretty good. That's people are really playing. It's good. It's a good time waster kind of a game. It wasn't meant to be super deep or anything. But all right. So next question comes from BSB333 with 9 votes. What do you think of Activision buying Match 3 game making company King, best known for Candy Crush, for a whopping $5.9 billion?
I think it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
Well,
That's
there's a
what I
follow-up.
think.
There's a follow-up question. What would you do if someone offered you a similar deal?
I would think it's the dumbest thing I'd ever heard of.
To me, it's just strange, right? I mean, like, so Activision's been around for a long time. It came out of Atari, whatever, back in the late 70s or early 80s or something. It's been around forever. They have a pretty strong legacy of good stuff. They're mostly a production company now, more than anything. But they've got all kinds of really cool, well-known stuff, and they're generally
They
liked.
own
Blizzard now, right?
Yeah.
I guess they've owned them for 5 years or so, whatever it's been.
Ever since Blizzard's subscriber base for WoW started dropping, that's about the time Activision took over.
Wait, after that or at the same time?
It was at the same time. Yeah, it's been plummeting ever since. So
Probably, but anyway. So I mean, the problem is that, Activision has become it's purely a company now, right? Its job is being a company. King.com is also purely a company. Like that's their goals are to accumulate revenue as fast as possible. So to me, it totally makes sense that it happened, but it still is very weird because I don't know why exactly.
To me, the price is a bit odd.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand the purchase price there. The way I see it is that King, when you say King is best known for Candy Crush, I would go out on a limb and say King is basically only known for Candy Crush. They have like Pet Rescue Saga, Candy Crush Soda Saga, I guess.
Well, they've cloned their own game like 100 times.
Yeah, and their whole company model was to clone games. And I believe before Candy Crush became popular, King had well over 150 games published under their name, almost all of which were pure clones of other games with just reskins. So King's whole approach has never been to innovate or come up with new and interesting IPs. It was just take what somebody else has done and try to make money off of it.
Which also is what Activision does now. So
Right. So I mean, it fits in their wheelhouse, but I think.
But it's now like 2 steps away from any form of creativity, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, but I think to me the worst part about it is if it makes sense, for example, for Activision to buy Blizzard because Blizzard has this big portfolio of intellectual property, right? They have the StarCraft universe, the Warcraft universe, the Diablo universe, and they're a creative company. They're pretty good at coming up with new stuff. Like they have Overwatch coming out. People are really excited about that.
Well, and they also have a huge fan base who will buy any new thing they produce.
Yeah, and that's because of things like Battle.net.
Yeah, but who's going to go like, ooh, a new King game came out, I'm going to go buy it.
Yeah, I mean, I can guarantee you that almost nobody who plays Candy Crush could name the company that made it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the problem is that King doesn't have long-term retention power from game to game.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're not basing any of their stuff off their studio. It's just about buying.
It's about Candy Crush.
Yeah, or any kind of deep IP or anything else. I mean, what people seem to think, and it seems like it makes sense, is that Activision has not been successful on mobile in terms of generating the kind of revenue that they can make on desktop and console and other things.
Well, they have now with Hearthstone.
They have now with Hearthstone. They just kind of started to do it. But so the idea is that they want to bring in this company who is, I mean, and King is really good at making just a fuck ton of money on mobile.
Yeah, I believe they made $2 billion in 2014.
Yeah, something enormous. Of course, they turned around and spent most of that on.
They probably spent
advertising.
1.99 billion on advertising. Yeah, actually, no, it was 500 million.
Well, they probably, I mean, yeah, and then they probably spent most of it on CEO salaries, and then the rest on advertising.
Yeah, there's about $1,000 left to go around between everybody else.
Yeah.
What would you guys do if someone offered us $5.9 billion for Butterscotch?
If somebody offered us $5.9 billion for Butterscotch right now, I might think about it.
Right now,
because right now that's a terrible deal for them because we haven't done enough yet.
Like we haven't. The IP hasn't matured. We don't have the huge player base.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't done anything worth even $1 million, or even $500,000, right? So if somebody came in and said, "We'll give you basically $6 billion for your company,"
yeah, I'd be like,
it would be insane not to do it. But here's the catch. I wouldn't then take that money and just disappear. Yeah. I'd be like, okay, let's make another game studio.
Start a series of new IPs.
We could just, we could keep making games.
And then we'd be able to do it forever. We'd have infinite resources effectively.
Yeah, because the thing is, and this is, I think, the weird part about being a tiny indie studio is it's just the three of us, right? So wherever we go,
that's where the studio is.
That's where our studio is. So it doesn't matter what we call it or what games we're making or whatever. We're still going to be making fun stuff for people, and we're still going to love the shit out of our fans and try to grow a community. And we would just happen to have $6 extra billion
right
at that point, which would be great.
I mean, they'd only be able to buy the IP essentially. That's what they'd be buying.
Yeah, they would basically be buying the IP that we have already made. So as long as that deal doesn't come with something like you can't make games for a year or something,
you can't tell your previous fans to go elsewhere. Come join our other studio. It's
because I can guarantee you guys, as soon as we made that deal, we would send out a Butterscotch ID newsletter being like, "Hey guys, here's our new studio.
Everybody jump ship to the luxury liner.
Come on over to our new studio." By the way, we have a super expensive office now because we have $6 billion for no reason.
Because we can.
I guess we can do that now.
It would be pretty fantastic if that happened.
Yeah,
right
and
now.
this is I think an interesting conversation too, because you often hear about the concept of people selling out, right? And that being sort of this negative thing where maybe somebody has their favorite band and that band is sort of like underground and not popular, not making any money. And then a record company approaches them or something. And they're like, "Hey, we'll give you a crap load of money for publishing rights or whatever." And then all of the current fans are like, "Oh no, they're selling out to the man." It's like, well, they're trying, like they gotta make a living. And if they can't, based on what they're currently doing, then, they gotta do something.
Yeah. Well, I think there can also be some misconception there too, where people will attribute it to different reasons than maybe actually are. So, like, for example, in our case, if say we actually, like, the type of game we made was essentially like a strictly extremely hardcore strategy games, like really, really in depth, like you would need a couple books in the background to look up rules and stuff to make sure that you're making the right moves. And then we said internally, we want to make a game that actually more people can play. Like, we want to make a more widely sort of accessible game.
Yeah, then we would become sellouts by doing that.
Right. So there's always these weird perceptions about these things. And I think, I was laughing today because we did all the big PR push for getting the Crashlands launch poster out the door. And, we always have a hard time approaching sites like Reddit or Imgur. We actually don't approach them anymore, aside from our own little subreddit, because the general response that people have on there is to assume that you are just like the most vile person on the planet. And so
it does take one to know one.
Yeah. I suppose that's fair. But it's just so weird because I think in the sellout case, as well as something like the Reddit thing, people have a hard time remembering that people on the other end are just people at the end of the day, I think. And I mean, that's part of the reason why we do the podcast and why we try to keep very close sort of ties with our actual players, because we have very little interest. I mean, yes, we do stuff to make money so that we can be alive, but we're not doing this for the money. That'd be
I'm certainly not, because I barely have any.
Yeah, exactly. We don't really have any. But even if Crashlands goes gangbusters and we suddenly actually do have some, the game itself, from pretty much all standpoints, from production, creation, as far as the time scale, the size of the thing, the market, is so risky that was also a terrible idea as far as making the thing goes. So it's like we're clearly not doing this for just that reason. We need to do it also. And I think that sometimes people fail to realize that also part is, it fades in and out of importance depending on what's going on. But I think my point to the subreddit comment was, one of our players had posted about the launch and had said, "Oh, this game's coming out of this 2-year cancer treatment thing." And the guy's response is every story on Reddit starts with a sob story.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah, I saw that.
I fucking read that, you asshole.
The
Like,
guy
what?
who had the cancer. Yeah,
You just called the last 2 years of my life a sob story.
a sob story.
And as if it was to get credit on arbitrary fucking karma credit
Yeah.
on some random website.
Just,
Well, Adam, what you don't know though is that so there's actually a kind of a secret project going on at Reddit where starting I think it's about 2 years from now, you're going to be able to cash in your Reddit karma for breadsticks at the Olive Garden.
Yeah. But wait, I thought breadsticks were already infinite at the
They won't be once this kicks in.
Oh, I see. So
You'll need Reddit karma for
Right.
the breadsticks. So
somehow that feels appropriate.
yeah, I think it'll fly. It'll go pretty well. So yeah, they aren't totally useless. All right, so next up we got Mia Kitty, number 1 Australia fan, Mia Kitty, with 9 upvotes. Do you think I use parentheses too much? Do you prefer parentheses, square brackets, braces, tuples, or double brackets more? I think it kind of depends on whether you're dealing with an array, if you're
Well, here's what I could say about
calling a
Seth.
function.
Seth hates parentheses when he's programming. Anywhere he
yeah.
can not put a parenthesis, he does not put it.
I feel like it's sort of like you're imprisoning your code
claustrophobia,
in a bubble. It wants to be free.
Let it roam.
Just let it fly. Let your freak flag fly, as they say.
No, I love parens. I just put them everywhere they could possibly get. I mean,
Well, this was a problem for me because Game Maker is where I learned to code, and in an if statement, you do not need parentheses in Game Maker. And you do need parentheses in every other programming languages, except for Python.
yeah, but Python at
with
least
your if
has a
statements.
colon at the end of the if so that now you're doing the next thing.
Yeah, but
and
that's
it
even-
indents all the next stuff so you're in the same code.
Yeah, but
block.
also in Game Maker, you don't need semicolons at the end of your lines. Basically, you just kind of write shit. You just kind of slap your hands on the keyboard.
And then
Game
you
Maker,
just hope for the best.
loosey-goosey.
Game Maker kind of is like, okay, I'll see what I can do with this, and then a game comes out. So that's sort of our secret sauce.
I'm more of a extremely complicated sentences with parentheses that then include parentheses inside of them, which are actually converted into square brackets. And then if we go one layer deeper, we go braces, and then one layer deeper is tuples. So,
Yeah, I gotta say though, we got an article coming out on Polygon in a couple days, which is written by Sam, and he asked Adam and me to proofread it for him. And I can attest to the tendency to use incredibly long sentences with dashes and colons in place of periods with new
can't
sentences.
stop the flow of my ideas.
You can't stop it.
Get the
It's
man.
just-
The man's
it's like
trying to keep me down.
Sam's sentences are like a freight train.
Yeah, once I get going, it's hard to.
Runaway train, never going back.
Never going
as
back.
they say.
Yeah,
Next
I don't
question. Little Gamer with 9 upvotes.
I hope he's not 13 little. You know what I'm saying?
No, he's 77. He's just a very small man. Little Gamer says, what would you guys improve about the studio if you had the money for it? This kind of comes back to that $6 billion.
All right,
It's
cool.
all about
So-
the money today.
all right,
It's
let's
all about
say
those Benjamins.
Everyone's asked about Benjamins. So let's say, okay, Crashlands hits January 21st, actually makes more than $12. Okay.
You're
What are we
saying
gonna
does
do?
better than it would on Amazon.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying.
which we have only made $12 on. Just
This is true. What would be the first thing that you would want to have happen? Big or
an
small?
office. A physical place to work.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
The worst thing, so I love gaming as a hobby, but I have been almost incapable of doing it just because of psychological reasons. Because I work at my desk, in my home, well, actually it's the guest bedroom in my apartment, is my office. And when I'm done working for the day, what I have to do is go, okay, it's 7 p.m. I'm done working. Now I'm going to play a game or something. So I don't even move from my current location. I just hit Alt Tab or something. And that's how I transition from working to playing. But it feels kind of shitty because at any moment I could tab out of my game and get back to work because I'm right there. Right. And so there's this kind of constant undercurrent of guilt that comes with relaxing when you play in the same place that you work, which I'm over
not good
it.
for you.
I'm
Yeah.
over it. I don't want to do it anymore. So even if our office is like a $150 a month broom closet with half a desk in it that we can just slam our laptops down on.
Yeah, we don't need much, man. Most of Crashlands was made from, on my side in a hospital bed with an armchair.
In a 10 by 10 foot room, yeah, on a food tray.
Yeah.
A swiveling food tray.
It doesn't need to be the nicest place. Just
Though
place
it would
we
be
call our
better
own.
if it was nice. What I want to do,
if we have the money, it'd be nice.
if we have the money, what I'd want to do is have the office space, but then have it attached to a little coffee shop that makes sandwiches and stuff.
Then we could be like, yo, coffee shop.
That thing could also run independently, so it wouldn't just be a money sink. But what we
That
could do
actually
is
has
just have
been
it
one
feed us.
of our sort of long-term goals is to, well, and the cool thing that we want to do with the coffee shop is, so Adam is pretty into electronics and trying to learn about all that stuff. And Sam and I love doing jam games. Mm-hmm. So one thing that we were thinking about doing is start at the coffee shop, and Adam can build arcade cabinets.
Yeah.
And Sam and I can make
And arcade tables. So when you sit down in the place, your table will be a little arcade game of some
Yes,
sort.
but here's the kicker. Sam and I can jam out small games, arcade games, that will only exist on that particular table or that particular cabinet. Nowhere else in the entire world will you be able to play that game.
So you sit down, have some coffee, and then flip your table across the room in rage.
Yeah, the tables will be flip resistant. They'll have rubber padding. And
I think we should actually build the tables so that they can be flipped.
Have you seen that table flipping game that they have in arcades? It's like a strength. There's actually a table with a hinge on it, and you have to flip it up, and it like smashes into a thing, and you get points based on how hard you flip the table.
That sounds amazing.
Are you
pretty
making this up? I think you're making this
No,
up.
it's a real thing. Just head to the Googles and Google it.
All right. I'll do
All right,
that
next-
after this cast.
Next question comes from Spectral_Hunt. What would you guys ever consider buying or selling assets, shaders, audio, etc. from the Game Maker marketplace?
Ooh.
No.
Maybe. Well, I don't know.
No.
Why
Here's why no.
Does anybody buy things on the marketplace?
Well, there's that, but here's the more important. Why no. Because we've had similar questions about stuff like, would we ever consider opening up Butterscotch ID to other developers? Any kind of things that we're creating. What about finding a way to share those with others, whether for profit or not? In either case, what we end up doing is basically creating yet one more thing that we have to maintain. Mm-hmm. And that we have to make sure it works, and that we have to provide support for, et cetera. Because even if we say, hey, we're not going to provide support for this, just as is, we're still going to get lots of emails from people who are using it, asking us about stuff. Which is fine. We like, responding to that kind of thing. But we don't have time to take all of the other things that we're doing and then also support and maintain and, cultivate a community for those things.
We still want to make the games.
Yeah, we need to make the games. I mean, it's already hard enough to manage publishing a single game on a bunch of platforms, but it's made way more difficult because anytime we make an update to something like Butterscotch ID, for example, or make a new game so that we want to have some cool cross-game stuff that occurs, and we have to go back and update every game and update them for every platform. Mm-hmm. So it's already the case that if when we want to go maintain our just our games, it takes days to a few weeks to basically kind of reassemble everything and update everything, remember how the code works.
Well, it's
all that
8
stuff
right
pushed
now
out.
between our 4 games, which are only on 2 stores. It's 8 functional builds that we have to make.
Yeah.
So it's
That all have to be tested. We have to make sure that they all work. We get, separate support issues for all of them. And then now with Crashlands, we're going to have, this one's going to be on 3 platforms. So
4 operating systems.
4 operating systems, right.
So that brings it up to 12 now.
Yeah.
So it
Maybe the
tedious.
first thing I would do if we had $5.9 billion is just hire like 1 or 2 people to just do that.
Yeah, well, we've talked about that in past podcasts as well.
I do think also, I mean, there's a weird thing about that, though, because I think all of us enjoy making the game so much that I would feel bad paying someone money to maintain our stuff. Because I'm like, we don't want to do this.
But, if you pay someone well enough, it's fine.
Yeah, we'll just pay them well, assuming we have the resources.
Yeah, if somebody had just a really great salary with benefits to just maintain some games,
plus we don't need,
they'd be like, yeah, I'll do that.
Not a terrible job.
Yeah.
But we don't need, it's going to be a while before we need somebody whose full-time and only job it is to maintain existing games.
That's true.
And so
I do think so. We built a ton of really cool tools for for Crashlands in particular, like the creator. I mean, I'll view that as our sort of, as far as buying or selling assets go. Since we plan on turning that over to the community after launch at some point, that's kind of the thing in my mind that falls in that. I'm more interested in those sorts of things where we get to build stuff that other people get to use, not in particular just like game maker related.
Yeah, but it supports our games in that.
Yeah,
but that's
part
of our universe.
Right, but I mean, even like the thing that Rami made from Vlambeer, which is the do press kit and that sort of thing, where I think those are really, really fun and really cool ways to give back to the community. I think we just have to be very careful for where we're at because we don't have any sustainable success right now. So until we get that, it's those things. Unfortunately, we can't. We
don't have enough to give back.
Yeah, and I think another sort of, just to jump on that as well, most of the stuff that we would offer, so for example, if we were like, oh, we're going to make Butterscotch ID open to other developers, there's basically two types of developers. There's big studios, where if they wanted to do something like Butterscotch ID, they just could.
Yeah.
And then there's tiny studios, or mid-size or, small indie studios, where if they wanted to do something like Butterscotch ID, it wouldn't matter because they don't have the money for it.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to sell that service,
we don't have there's nobody to buy
audience.
it.
Yeah, we would have a pretty hard time.
And it's way too costly for us to maintain it for lots of other people as well.
Yeah.
Tricky.
Next question comes from Older Everin with 8 upvotes. Is Sam training on the face drawing?
Yeah.
If yes, how is it going? And if no, will we ever see faces?
Tell us all about it, Sam.
Okay.
We need some backstory.
Yeah, let's fill this in. So again, I'm really bad at art. Maybe you can't.
Well, that is
tell
inaccurate right now.
Well, let me just.
Sam is bad at some art.
Yeah.
I'm still bad at art. I'm just going to say it, and you maybe can't tell now, but
doesn't that mean you're not though?
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know where I'm at with this stuff, but when it comes
Sounds like you got imposter syndrome, buddy.
When it comes to drawing things, that's probably true. But when it comes to drawing things, I do have a very hard time with faces in particular, with arms. Arms are very hard. Generally, things that need to be in correct proportions in order to look like the appropriate thing, which is most human body sort of situations, I have a very hard time with. Flux probably took, I don't even know. I mean, she went through, I think, like 5 to 8 character revisions before she was actually done over the course of about 6 months. Just every so often when I had gotten a little bit better at drawing stuff, I would have to come back and make her look less terrible. And still, she's kind of, she's a little stiff feeling, my opinion. Because
she doesn't have knees or elbows.
Yeah, it's mostly a number of parts problem.
Yeah. And, well, the tricky thing, though, is that I don't, when it comes to drawing those things, I've avoided drawing faces in particular until the Crashlands NPCs, which I think turned out pretty good as far as their faces.
Yeah.
And the reason is that I avoid drawing the things that I just can't draw because I just find other ways around them. So,
well, because you're a person and people avoid doing things they're not good at yet.
Well, I think also,
well, it's also that I need to, if I need to get a character done, then it's irrelevant. So
it's got to get done fast.
Yeah, so that's my focus. It's less about avoiding the thing that I can't do and more about getting it done in whatever way possible, which in most cases just involves circumventing the definition of what an arm is. For example, to make it into a banana, which is actually one of the first characters I drew for Talfight of the Gods, which is the precursor to Talfight 2. The guy has bananas for arms because I just couldn't. It took me 45 minutes and I was struggling on an arm in a 48-hour game jam. And Seth just looked over and he was like, dude, it's a banana. It's okay.
Embrace it.
Which I think comes into an important early game dev lesson where if you're just getting started, if you really just can't do a thing, then maybe you just don't need to do
Well,
that.
not even that. Like, not even to that extreme. We've been joking about this with our testers lately because they keep on asking us questions about whether certain things in the game are behaving as intended or if it's a bug, right? And it'll be things like, oh, I killed this creature and it dropped 3 beaks or whatever, right? And you can see 1 beak when it attacks you. And our response was, well, they have more beaks on their backs,
Which
because you never see their backs. And so the joke is that we use lore as a way to explain away either bugs or inconsistencies in what we're doing, or just things that we didn't want to code. Because it's actually a pain in the ass to code things like you can only drop 1 beak sometimes.
Also, I mean, it's a game. So, as long as it's not too gamey, then nobody actually cares.
Well, and also you're fighting aliens. Like, you kill a womp and it drops 6 hearts. And it's like, wow, that was a great jackpot. I got
it was a lot of loot, right?
Yeah. And we also had a great bug where there's these creatures in Crash Bandicoot called Zugs. They're kind of these bouncy turtle-like things. And their heads animate separately from their bodies, so their heads kind of lag behind a little bit. And on people who were getting super low frame rates on, older Android devices at certain times, the Zugs' heads would not calculate properly because of the lag. And their heads would just kind of like come off and just kind of be like floating
somewhere else,
floating around or bouncing around. And so they were asking about it. And I did fix the bug, but in the meantime, I was just like, well, here's the thing about Zugs is Zugs are actually 2 separate animals, one of which is only a body and the other of which is only a head. And they just have a symbiotic relationship where they use the power of teamwork and friendship to overcome life's obstacles.
And that's now canon.
And we can make a game out of that at some point if we wanted to.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Absolutely.
It would be a co-op game, obviously.
So I guess to directly answer the question, I haven't been working on faces, but because I had to draw some for the 3 races in the game. There's 5 different sort of faces for each race. There's about 15 faces that I've actually drawn now. Not counting Hugo's face or a few other people. So I think I figured out some ways to get around my various pitfalls.
And if you can't figure it out, just throw a beard on it.
Yep.
That takes care of most of it.
Covered right up.
Yeah. All right, next question. Also for Sam. Sam, Mr. Popular Guy.
Oh, yeah, I win.
Comes from Gafferman. Sam,
hey.
What books did you escape into during your hospitalization /vacation? For Adam and me, just do we have any favorite books?
I'll hit mine first, I guess.
Yeah, do it.
So I think that the best book that I read, I'll just do that. The best book that I read, going through all this stuff, was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And Frankl was this crazy cool dude who is a psychologist who happened to be a guy who was put through the Holocaust internment camps and lived. And it's not a story about the crazy shit that he went through. I mean, it's obviously there. It's actually, he decided when he was in there as a psychologist that it was his job to essentially watch everybody and see how it was that people dealt with that situation from the inside. So he was also, again, he was a prisoner. He wasn't one of the Nazi dudes who was watching the camp. He was going through it. And that was one of the most enlightening books, and especially given the timing of me finding that and then reading it was very poignant. So I would 100% recommend it. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And if you want just a straight up fantasy book that's so good, the Kingslayer Chronicles, I think is what it's called. The Name of the Wind is the first book in it. The third book still hasn't come out after like 20 years. Supposedly the guy's working on it. He better be. But The Name of the Wind is a phenomenal entry into a fantasy universe that is freaking sweet. Those are my 2 recommendations.
Adam?
For me, so I'm into sci-fi stuff. So I read basically 2 kinds of books. I read sci-fi and information dense things. Meaning like literally I'll read a book on a programming language, for example. Or the history of a thing or whatever. And then otherwise, almost everything I read is basically sci-fi. So I would say my favorite things are sci-fi fantasy, but on the sci-fi side. So my favorite things are series or I guess author collections. And that would include the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, which is just fucking fabulous. And I almost never reread or rewatch things. but that series is one of the few exceptions. Then there is Neil Stevenson, who just has a whole bunch of really awesome, deep, nerdy, great stuff.
Dirty.
What is that? What I said? Great.
You just go
It's
back.
a hybrid of
gotcha.
nerdy.
Dirty. It's dirty stuff. I'm not sure what my favorite one there is. Probably, I'm going to go with Cryptonomicon, probably. Although the newest, or one of the newer ones, Seven Eves, is also really quite impressive.
Now, Adam, you recommended that I read Reamdy.
Yeah, Reamdy is
by Neil
awesome.
Stevenson.
Yeah.
Which I have on my nightstand, but I've been so
Oh my god, you need to read it.
goddamn busy working on Crashlands. I haven't read anything.
Actually, so Cryptonomicon, although it's awesome, is not my favorite. It's Anathem is definitely my favorite Neil Stevenson book, where he sets up an alternate universe that's basically where math is like a religion, sort of.
Isn't it though?
Really good. Reamdy is great. It's like it's set sort of current day, where the focus is around, and a lot of the thing takes place in an MMO. So it's kind of an interesting book. But yes, and there's that guy. Then the last one is who I'd only recently even knew existed is I don't know how to say his name. Ian or whatever. Ian M. Banks, who I think just died recently. But he has these really cool. really cool books.
Poor guy.
So sad.
Well, actually, not. I mean, he can't. He's gone. So.
Yeah. So it's just that's what it is.
Just is what it is.
But he has he has a lot of different stuff, but he's well known in the sci-fi world for the Culture series, which is sort of this universe he set up that has a whole bunch of books in it that are just it's kind of a different take on sci-fi than the vast majority of others, and so it's very fun. It's still a lot about war and stuff, but it's kind of the opposing forces are basically a utopia versus other things. And unlike other books where it's usually a dystopia or a utopia that turns out to not be a dystopia, it really is like a utopia versus other things. And so it's this very interesting thing that gets set up. So those are the things that I like the most. On. Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna throw out 2 sci-fi and 1 fantasy. So sci-fi, Encounter with Tiber.
Oh yeah,
by Buzz Aldrin. This motherfucker went to the moon. Okay, so you should read his sci-fi book because, come on, he went to the moon. It's hard sci-fi though, so
yeah,
he likes to go in. You could tell he's just super pumped about science, so he goes into a lot of technical detail about how everything works and whatever. But it's a great story. So that's Encounter with Tiber. If you're into sci-fi but don't want anything hard, then I would recommend the Star Force series, which is kind of like reading that series is kind of like watching an 80s action movie.
My laptop. Oh god, no, I didn't make it.
What is happening over there? We're apparently experiencing.
Oh, his laptop was dying, so he probably
his battery's going out.
His laptop battery lasts for like 1 hour on the dot.
So if we don't keep podcast length,
which we're at 59 minutes. We just hit 1 hour on the podcast. So.
Sorry, my battery was dying.
I knew it.
Did you hear me sprint out of the room?
We just heard you come back making weird racket noises. It's all good.
Yeah, you were surprisingly stealthy about it.
Thank you.
But yeah, so Star Force series by B.V. Larson. It's super cheesy. It's sort of like military sci-fi almost. But it's from the perspective of a guy who's a computer programmer who ends up leading the human race in a fight against robots. And because he's a great computer scientist and programmer, he's just really a very good military strategist against robots because he knows how they think. So it's a pretty good series. And then fantasy, I would recommend the Codex Alera series, which was recommended to me by Sam.
So good.
I read it. I think I've read through it twice. It's a 6-book series, and each book is fat. And my wife, I think, has read the whole series 4 times. So it is just effing solid. I'm not going to reveal anything about it other than just you should trust me and read the shit out of it. So that's called Codex Alera. And what's the first one?
I have no idea.
Furies of Calderon. That's the first one.
Nice.
Yeah, so those are our book recs.
Oh, and I will say for anyone who thinks they want to, who hasn't take on the book Anthem, which I mentioned a moment ago, I have one piece of advice when you do, which is that he literally creates an alternate universe, including like an entire glossary of terms you need to know. I'd suggest spending a night and just reading those terms first. Otherwise, it's really hard to read the book.
I don't have to study before I read a book for fun.
Now, when you read this book, you're gonna need to go through the tutorial.
It's exactly. Think of it as a tutorial.
Or you could switch it to easy mode.
There's no easy mode.
Setting at the beginning.
There's no easy mode in Neil Stephenson books.
All right. Well, that's all the time we got for Coffee with Butterscotch. So thanks everybody for listening. And once again, this is the last week for our t-shirts over at bit.ly/bscotchjorts. Or just go to butterscotch-shenanigans.com and click on the shirts link. And we'll probably be doing another run of shirts in a few months. But if you want yours in time for, to impress Santa Claus, now's the time. Yeah. And otherwise, if you want to get questions on next week's podcast, just head over to podcast.bscotch.net and ask away. All right, everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.